The Broken Sword by Poul Anderson is largely the tale of two men, Skafloc and Valgard. The true son of a Danish Viking noble, Skafloc is kidnapped as a newborn through the machinations of a vengeful witch and the elf lord Imric, and he is raised to be a mighty warrior among the fairy folk. In his place is left Valgard, a half-troll changeling prone to bouts of moodiness and violent rage, who feels out of place in the human world and doesn't know why for much of his life. Propelled by a volatile mix of their own passions, the manipulations of others, and fate, Skafloc and Valgard find themselves on opposite sides of a cataclysmic war as elves and trolls fight for control of the British Isle. As he slowly loses everything to Valgard's unquenchable rage, Skafloc comes to believe that the only thing that can turn the tide is Tyrfing, a magical broken sword that was given to him by the Norse gods on his naming day. Even though everyone tells him that the sword is cursed, Skafloc sets out to repair it to take his revenge on the troll invaders and Valgard, no matter the cost. At its core, The Broken Sword is a tale about revenge. All the major characters are affected by it, and it is the driving motivation for many of the significant actions in the novel. Throughout the story, however, it is not difficult for the audience to see that revenge is an obsession that makes no one better. Even when someone succeeds in achieving it, revenge does not improve the life of the person seeking it. In this way, The Broken Sword joins a long list of literature that cautions about the ultimately destructive nature of revenge. Also see Moby Dick, where Captain Ahab imperils the crew of the Pequod with his desire for vengeance on a whale that is oblivious to him. Or The Prestige, where two rival magicians ruin themselves and everything around them trying to outdo one another. In The Broken Sword, Imric, the Witch of the Woods, Skafloc, Ilreed, Valgard, all show themselves unable or unwilling to forego revenge, and their lives become increasingly narrow in focus and hopelessly violent. As it were, they cannot choose life.
Choose life, choose a job, choose a career, choose a family, choose a fucking big television, choose washing machines, cars, compact disc players and electrical tin openers.
Today we would call this novel historical fantasy because it is set in Danelaw during a specific time in British history, while also including Norse gods, elves, trolls, and a variety of other creatures from myth and folklore. The story also manages to convey the alien attitudes, concerns, and behavior of these supernatural creatures, particularly in regards to their views on the passage of time when compared to that of mortals. The book has the weight and drama of various Norse sagas, the Eddas, and classical Greek tragedy. Unlike the majority of contemporary grimdark fantasy that is full of edgy nihilistic posturing and characters who are immoral because nothing means anything, The Broken Sword is grim and sad because everything is infused with meaning, possibly too much meaning. Freda even comments how drab and toned down life among men feels after her time among the elves. The novel can read as operatic melodrama, and I don't mean that as a negative criticism. There is often an excruciating sense that these characters are engaged in important deeds and they know it. This comparison might sound strange, but think about a good dramatic show or movie set in high school. Those succeed not by faithfully recreating what high school was like, but by recreating how high school feels when you're that age. The first edition of The Broken Sword was published at the same time as The Fellowship of the Ring. While not as popular as Tolkien's work, it is a foundational text of the fantasy genre, cited as an influence on the works of many fantasy writers up to the current day. That's to say nothing of the massive amount of high-quality material Poul Anderson put out under his own name and various pseudonyms over his long career. You can also do a quick search through BookTube and find this novel getting praise from Outlaw Bookseller, Grammaticus, and Randy Ray, the literate Texan, who I hope is still staying hydrated and staying sexy. I'll have links to their channels in the description. There are two editions of The Broken Sword, one from 1954 and a second edit from 1971. The main changes, all made by Anderson, are to scale down some of the descriptive language and to move away from some of the more archaic word choices he made in the original. The author's note in the 1971 edition explains his mindset at both times. I read the 1971 edition, and I found and skimmed through a printing of the first edition. My preference is for Anderson's 1971 edits, but I can understand why some people prefer the earlier version. What else is like The Broken Sword? If you're reaching way back, you may want to read some of the Norse myths, Beowulf, or something like Laxdæla's saga. Contemporary books that have similar motifs and themes would be the Elric stories by Michael Moorcock, who has openly stated that the work influenced him, or The Children of Húrin by J.R.R. Tolkien, possibly his darkest story. You may also want to read Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie, which is a bleak, novel-length meditation on revenge in a fantasy setting. In movies, you'll find the same tone and sense of drama in Excalibur, directed by John Boorman, and The Northman, directed by Robert Eggers. Oddly enough, some of the games in the Final Fantasy series will share similar, over-the-top melodrama and angst that infuses this book, but they won't be nearly as grim or tragic. Have you read The Broken Sword? How do you rate it as a classic of fantasy literature? Are you familiar with other works by Poul Anderson? Be sure to share your thoughts in the comments. Next in the box of paperbacks is the second of Poul Anderson's one-two punch, Hrolf Kraki's Saga, a novel retelling the legend of a Danish king. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my peculiar notions. If you appreciate this channel and want to support it, you know what to do. You can also take a moment to like, share, comment, or subscribe to the channel of another YouTube creator you enjoy, so they won't have to undertake a vain quest of revenge against the algorithm. Until next time, read some good books, live, and be well.